Hi, my name is Rob Scott, and welcome to another big UC update at UC Summit 2022. So today I'm joined by Phil Moen, who's the President and CEO at Unimax, and he's going to be sharing his perspective on the UC marketplace, what's hot, and what's new at Unimax in 2022. Welcome, Phil.
Well, thanks for having me, Rob. Appreciate it very much.
Oh, good to see you. Thanks for joining me. I suppose a good place to start, Phil, just before we dive in, would you mind giving us a quick intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what the company does, please.
Oh, you bet. So I'm Phil Moen, as Rob just noted, and I've been in the technology space for over 30 years. Half of that has been here at Unimax. Prior to Unimax, I had been involved in mostly either ERP or CRM software, enterprise resource planning and customer relationship management software at a few different companies. Here at Unimax, we're a software company that's built a UC management suite. So we have a number of products that kind of overlay the various vendor products that are available for unified communication deployments. So that would be like Cisco, Microsoft, Avaya, etc. And the reason we've done this is because managing large deployments, and that's primarily where we reside as the, Fortune 1000, managing those large deployments is difficult. And so we make that a much easier process with a lot of cost savings. And we're currently managing over about 10 million endpoints today.
Thanks, Phil. Wow, that is a lot of endpoints to manage. Okay, so a good place to start. I mean, what's been dominating customer conversations? What's been happening in the world of UC service management in the past year?
I think it boils down to kind of three trends that we've seen. The first trend is pure lights out automation. So what I mean by that is, there's a lot of work that goes into managing a UC platform, including provisioning, deprovisioning, change management that can be automated to some degree. And so an example of that, we have a worldwide bank and they've managed their system manually for years. They are now automatically provisioning and deprovisioning. And when I say provisioning, it's hybrid. In this case, it's hybrid. So when an Active Directory user gets added, so a new employee has just joined, that new employee will automatically be provisioned, in their case, a Cisco phone and voicemail box, but also the user profile, so the UC profile, and then also they get provisioned a collaboration profile. So in their case, it was Microsoft Teams. And because we know a lot of the business logic, we're also able then to make several settings, such as this employee was in a particular department, so they get added to these teams on Teams. And then in addition to that, they're provisioned a direct inward dial number, a DID, that's based upon their location, so they get the right number in the right range. And then we add their cell phone number to that so that they have simultaneous ring. And then we take the DID that was just provisioned and we write it back to Active Directory, and in this case, both Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. So there's a lot that happens in that automation process, and the permutations of doing that is pretty much endless because of all the given different deployments that we see in these large organizations. So that was the first thing, the first trend that I would sort of note. The second one is kind of along the same line of automation, but it's moving the solution closer to the end user. So in this case, we're seeing that what the companies want to do is they want to have their help desk agents be able to help the employees when they've set up a ticket, called in, what have you. So if they call in and they say, hey, I can't remember my voicemail password, I need to change it. Normally that ticket would pass on to some telecom engineer, and that would take time and extra expense. So instead, we've given a UI that's a very simple, hard to break UI that won't cause any catastrophic changes given in the hands of a tier one help desk, and allow them to make those simple changes or even provision an asset in some cases as is necessary. And the third level of that, the third trend we're seeing, is trying to get that even closer all the way to the end user. So oftentimes that's called self-care, right? So we're giving a UI that, again, is very simple. It's Amazon-like. Wouldn't need to be trained on it. You can just walk in and say, okay, how do I get all these changes or provisioning done? And there's a manner to do that that is very simple in effect. shift. So those are kind of the big things that have really cropped up here in the last year, and we're seeing an awful lot of deployments of these three levels of automation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I imagine since the pandemic, there has been this huge increase in the number of projects, migrations, implementations, and that kind of thing. And when you have got thousands of employees and users, then to deploy unified communications, collaboration, phone system and everything else is a much bigger job than it used to be.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We've seen so many changes in the last 2 years, given the pandemic. But even aside from that, the idea of cutting cost by going to automation is large as well. So even when I might or might not be working at home, the whole idea of not having to do the task work associated with that with telecom engineers is huge.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about your portfolio, your product. How do you take this to market, and kind of how do you wrap it up for the customer?
Sure. Well, aside from, automation that I just noted, one of our very popular products, probably our most popular product, is a product called Help One. Help One is that UI that helps the help desk agent that I kind of just described, but it's used across the industry, not just on help desk agents, but also for, say, HR situations where they're taking care of the onboarding of the employee, but a lot of the onboarding has to do with these UC components and the provisioning that's necessary there, whether it's just a user in Teams or Cisco, or it's a full hard scale employment such as a phone on the desktop, etc. No matter what that is, that allows a help desk agent to be able to make those changes, even if they're simple, like I mentioned, password changes or pins, but also things that are a little more complicated, like adding a speed dial. So oftentimes, the own employee doesn't know how to change a speed dial or something simple on their phone. And of course, there's far more complicated things too that we can do, but we try to skinny down what the help desk agent is allowed to do so they can only do certain things. That means that, again, a tier 1 or tier 2 help desk agent is able to help an employee who's called in or sent in a ticket without mucking up the system in any other way. If you have full provisioning and user rights on an advanced UC system, you could do a lot of damage very fast. So we needed to be sure that we were insulating the organization from a tier 1 help desk agent and then only allowing them to do certain things. And that changes over time. So these products, and specifically this one, Help One, allows the end user, our client, to be able to configure as time goes on. So they're constantly reconfiguring the system to allow that agent maybe a little bit more use, a little bit more functionality, or even in some case when it's problematic, removing some as well. I think the other large product that I would note here, because just we have such a large piece of the industry using it, is a product called Number Pro. Number Pro manages numbers, and it manages a lot of different numbers. So I mentioned direct inward dial numbers earlier. That's in the US, a 10-digit number. And that number, that 10-digit number, is usually provisioned to an employee. And then from there are other things that happen to that and condition it. Sometimes it's turned into an E.164 formatted number for the use in a UC system, or a line URI in use in a UC system as well. It's oftentimes conditioned into a smaller extension number. And the way that we transform these numbers is unique. So we're able to see what numbers a company has purchased from the telcos. Then we deduce which numbers are in use, and therefore we know which ones are not provisioned or available. That way, we can help a company not buy too many numbers and provision just what they need, and warn them if they're about to run out of numbers. Say they're down to 1,000 numbers left, and that's their kind of level of where they get concerned. And we'll alert them and say, okay, this is the numbers that you have. What's interesting about this product and this problem is it is completely universal. Every company has this problem. I suppose if you've got 10 to 100 employees, it's not that big a deal, but anything over 5,000 employees makes it hard. So most companies in the world there are a lot of companies that have that number of people and have this problem. So we're serving that particular marketplace very well and have sold literally hundreds and hundreds of these systems into companies to help manage their numbers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm imagining as well that large organisations, enterprise, they would have multiple carriers in place, they'd have multiple different types of PBXs, and we're certainly moving towards more of a multi-vendor world, aren't we, in the UC world as well? So it's there's a lot to manage, and it sounds like your solution kind of takes care of all that. So that's great. In terms of what's happening, this year, it's 2022. Where's your focus going to lie? Kind of how do you see the year kind of performing? And is anything new happening at Unimax this year?
Yeah, I think 2022 has already started off quite well. We're seeing more and more activity coming at this point in the pandemic. I think there is this sort of transformation that has taken place and is continuing to take place, which for us is a boon. You kind of mentioned hybrid environments by saying multiple vendors, and we see that increasing. So we have a lot of people using multiple platforms, multiple PBXs across multiple vendors. And so that for us is our bailiwick. So we feed right into that. And as we see more and more of that happening, our products become more and more needed. I think some of the other new things in 2022 here are we'll be adding WebEx users calling and messaging. So that's WebEx's entree into that space, and our Cisco's entree into that space. So we're adding more of that, and we're planning another great major release for all of our products in this calendar year.
Fantastic. Well, it certainly sounds like an interesting year ahead. So I wish you all the very best. And for anyone out there looking to find out more about Unimax, you can jump on their content hub at UC Summit. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, Phil. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Rob.
And thanks to everyone for watching. If you've enjoyed today's update, there's lots more to explore at UC Summit this year. And don't forget to follow the Big UC Update hashtag on social. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.